Even back when this remake was first announced, despite all the criticism around the game's potential combat system and performance, I was excited to return to Silent Hill. Silent Hill 2 was actually the first survival horror game I ever played back on the PlayStation 2. Me and my friends were constantly on edge due to the atmosphere and creepy sounds. We even had massive jump scares when our cell phone would ring or a fire truck was blurring by outside our windows. So, did the remake recreate the memories and goosebumps of the original for me? Honestly, no.
Mary, could you really be in this town?
If you are not familiar, you play as James, who repeats the mistake that every main character from every horror game and movie makes. He receives a letter from his dead wife 3 years after her passing, asking him to find her in Silent Hill at their special place, and James runs off to the cursed town to go find her. A majority of my time here was spent feeling more annoyed with the enemies and puzzles, as well as the constant backtracking, and really not much time being scared or creeped out at all. And I'm not someone who can get past these games bravely or easily. I get scared very easily. This game has often been compared to Capcom's Resident Evil 2 remake, and I will discuss some of the comparisons, but I won't spend too much time comparing. A lot of reviewers have stated that combat is way better in Resident Evil, and I think it's a bit more of a 50-50. Yes, Resident Evil has better gunplay and weapons, whereas Silent Hill, in my opinion, has the better close-range combat, with your primary weapon being either a wooden plank or a pipe. And the dodge mechanic is also a good feature with the combat in Silent Hill 2 that definitely adds more of a fleshed out combat mechanic, if you will. Now, if you're skilled enough, you can even beat tough enemies and even some bosses without having to fire a single bullet. And since Silent Hill doesn't limit how much ammo you can carry per weapon, like the other horror games such as Resident Evil, you can hold as many bullets as you can find. I once had 175 bullets available for my pistol for a decent portion of the game. Let me say that again. I once had 175 bullets available for my pistol for a decent portion of the game, which is kind of unheard of in these types of video games. Now, unfortunately, however, James is really slow, and I'm not talking about his running speed, because that's pretty much the norm for most of these kinds of games, but James takes way too long to change weapons, to even use health items or reload, and I actually died a couple of times due to his inability to swiftly switch guns or heal fast enough. There also isn't any options to upgrade your weapons for more clip capacity or improve damage and aiming like there is in Resident Evil. But as I said before, you don't really have a limit to how much ammo you can carry, so I guess that's kind of the give and take for this game's combat system. Also, unlike some other games where melee weapons will degrade and break over time, such as games like Legend of Zelda or The Last of Us, in here your wooden plank and even the pipe that you get later on is pretty much permanent. It won't break or degrade or anything like that. Now, some things that this game does amazingly well is its sound. The game has really great sounding moments intended to creep you out and scare you. A lot of reviewers expressed their fear when playing through this game, and I will admit I was a bit creeped out at first with the feeling of the creepy music and the sounds of the monsters, the fog and darkness everywhere, but that feeling faded away faster than the game's environments disappearing with the fog. I was often annoyed with the game's enemies and their constant sounds after a little while. The mannequins were one of the most annoying enemy types because although they are pretty weak to your attacks and can be brought down with just a few hits, they do deal heavy damage and they like to hide in corners ready for an ambush attack. The nurses were even more annoying as they were essentially damage sponges to a point, and they are quick to strike. Even if you're in the middle of a combo, they can interrupt your combo attacks and strike very heavily, and if you manage to dodge the attacks, if you don't time it just right, they will just wail on you, and you sometimes will get stuck in a corner, unable to move anywhere, and you will just end up dying from that as well. Now, they kept true to the game's roots with the enemy designs, but I did wish that some enemies would have gotten a bit of a redesign, because some of these enemies have really stupid designs. Like, really stupid. And characters in the game do look good visually, but not amazingly. Not bad, they do look good, but I've seen better. These are characters like James and Maria and Eddie, just to name a few of them. And when it comes to the game's puzzles, I actually do like puzzles and I like to solve them, even if they are a little bit challenging. However, in Silent Hill 2, the puzzles were really annoying and they overstayed their welcome in my opinion. Puzzles like the clock and even the scale at the Toluca prison shouldn't have taken more than a few minutes, maybe 30 minutes max or so, to get past. And these puzzles were here for majority of that game's sections, depending on where they are placed. It just felt like more padding with a lot of filler intended to extend the length of the game. Whereas there are other ways to do this without making these puzzles so tedious and annoying. So for example, the clock is located at a part of the apartment section, and it was a huge part of that level that shouldn't have been that long. And the scale was within the Toluca prison. Again, took way too long to get through and get all the pieces when it shouldn't have been that long of a puzzle. There are other ways to extend the length of a game for a remake, and I felt it wasn't done very well here, unfortunately. It was these types of decisions that made certain sections like the apartment and the hospital just feel way too long and shouldn't have been that long of a section to get through. A lot of reviewers claim that you can finish the game within 16 hours, and if you kind of know what you're going through and where everything is, or you look up a guide online, that could be the case. Whereas I tried not to look at a guide, and I only looked at a guide maybe twice, and I beat the game in roughly 24 to 25 hours because of all the extra padding that the game had. And I couldn't rely on any knowledge from the original game because number one, a lot of the game's sections are slightly changed, modified, or different. And number two, I played that game so long ago that I don't have many memories of the different puzzles and different methods to get past these puzzles. And as I said, puzzles are much different this time around. So even if I did remember, it wasn't going to help me out a bunch. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the game does have a lot of backtracking. One weakness this game does suffer compared to Resident Evil is the map. While the game does have the advantage of James marking the map to indicate what doors are open that you can go through, which ones are locked, which ways are blocked, as well as certain areas of interest that are complete and aren't complete, such as different puzzles. The map, however, doesn't indicate when you left some items behind that you would need to get through the next section, whereas in Resident Evil, it will show on the map when you have left behind health items or ammo or key items. And the fact of not having this included in Silent Hill is what caused me to spend too much time backtracking to all these different rooms and places trying to find that key item that I couldn't find at all, and also not realizing that I sometimes had the item I needed to get through the next puzzle. So not too much help here, and I'm not looking for hand-holding either. It's just made the game much more longer than it had to be. The game also tries to increase the amount of fear that you feel by giving you the really crappy flashlight that honestly only does a little bit to help you see. And again, this would have been a positive for the fear of the game, but for me, it was just another bullet point for why the game was a bit annoying to me, unfortunately. And remember, I loved the first game back on the PS2, so I was really excited for this one. And I understand the flashlight being a specific mechanic to help with the fear, but it just wasn't done very well. And a lot of reviewers say the same thing, the flashlight is horrible, and hopefully they can fix that with some kind of update. Now let me be clear, this is just my opinion on how I felt about the game. So let me run down the things that this game will do well for you to enjoy it, as you may like the game more than I did based on these factors. The environments look great, both within the town's regular setting and the creepy demonic version of it. That, along with the music and sounds of the enemies, just might be enough to give you that creepy feeling, that goosebumps thing, if you will. The combat is pretty good in my opinion, primarily with the close range combat. Even using firearms are pretty good, as weapons do work very well, especially the shotgun. The shotgun does a lot of damage, but the melee combat for me was really the best part of the combat mechanics for the game. The game also has really good accessibility options where you can change the color of certain things on screen, like enemies or environments, and one in particular that I did was change the color of my weapon's reticle so that I can have a better time seeing my reticle when aiming at my targets. And as you probably already know, the game does have a bit more replay value, as you will be able to play the game multiple times with the ability to gain a new weapon or two, as well as the multiple endings you can unlock based on some of the choices that you make throughout the game. Now, the game does have these different sections of things you can find that are kind of like a flashback to the original game, and there is a theory that maybe it's an explanation of this game taking place in an alternate timeline. I won't go too much into that, but that is something very interesting to consider as well, since the game's director did confirm that all of the endings for the most part are canon. So there's a bit more of the sci-fi aspect to it as well, if that's something you really are into. But it is the lengthy puzzles that had no business sticking around as long as they did, the annoying enemies, the horrible flashlight, and the insane amount of backtracking that made the game much more tedious than it really had to be for me, and ultimately made the game more of an annoying chore than a fun, horrifying return to the town of Silent Hill. And the final two negatives is, number one, I expected much more from Pyramid Head this time around, but he didn't really do much or showed up as often as I thought he would. And no photo mode. Like, seriously, why is there no photo mode in the game? But I honestly don't think I could recommend this game at full price if you are similar to the way I am and how I felt about this game. But again, you may have a different experience. You might be scared in this game, whereas I wasn't. So maybe try it out. If you have a friend who owns the game, borrow it, do a share play or something. But for me, I personally would wait till it goes on sale or go to PlayStation Plus to play the game, unfortunately, for this scary experience. But thankfully, there's no reference or scenes from PT coming here, because if they included the PT part in this game, I wouldn't have played it anymore. I still have nightmares about PT. But that is my review for Silent Hill 2 Remake. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are about this game. Do you feel differently? Are you having a blast? Are you scared in the game? We'll have a conversation in the comments, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.